with something called the Overflow Leadership Journey. I'm really excited to be talking to you guys today so that I can tell you about an event that we're putting on for you guys called Momentum. Momentum is an event that's basically designed to help you guys process the life that you're currently in and kind of help you move forward into steps ahead. The event is going to be on February 26th. It'll start at 1:30 and go until 5:30 so that you have more than enough time to get back to community groups. But doors open at 1 o'clock so you'll have time for games and some fun snacks in between. If you have any questions at all, you'll be receiving a text message from your student leaders here soon, and you also will have a flyer from your house leaders to be able to grab as well. Thanks, guys.
Hey, what's up, Ripple Effect? Welcome to Community Groups. I'm stoked to be here with you guys. It's our first week back after being at the church for our large group gathering. And if you've been there, you know we're in the middle of kind of this really long series. It's called Continuum. And we've been in it for, I guess this is our week 6. So we're on the home stretch here. So buckle in, stick with us. We're getting there. And this is a really cool message, a really great message. And whenever I was looking at it, I was trying to think of a good example. And this may or may not be the most unrelatable example that I've ever given. Some of you will probably connect with it. Others will probably be, what the heck? I was thinking about it, and I play this game. It's called Clash Royale. And if you haven't played Clash Royale before, you should download it. You should join our clan and play with us. But anyways, it's this phone game. And basically you get like these little characters and you fight each other and you duel people. And sometimes whenever you're dueling these people, it seems like you just can't win. Like you'll put down this card and that card and you finally think you've got something that's going to beat them, and then it just doesn't. And it's seriously one of the most frustrating things in the world, and you just can't win. And everyone does this thing we call it rage quit, right? You get so angry you just quit the game and you don't even want to look at it. I do it in Battlefield sometimes too, or on Xbox sometimes too, right? Like you no matter what you do, you just can't seem to win. You just can't seem to get ahead, and you just want to quit. Right? And we've probably all got stuff like that in our life, right? Like whether it's a game or a card game or playing my wife in Monopoly or whatever. We've all got those things, right? That gets so frustrating where it feels like you just can't win. Maybe it's school for you, right? Like it feels like you just can't do anything right. You just can't get ahead. You just can't win, and you just want to quit. Like it's so frustrating that you'd rather just kind of push it aside and quit. And sometimes, if we're being real, it feels that way with God. It feels like we're fighting a losing battle. Like we find God, right? We believe Christ, and then we try so hard. We think, okay, now it's time for me to act a certain way or be a certain way or think a certain way. And we try so hard to act this way, think this way, be this way, hang out with these people. But at the end of the day, we just can't do it. We're just left with a mess, right? And it's like this fight that we just can't win. And it's easy to think that that's what happens whenever we become a Christian, right? That we get forgiven for everything that we've done in the past. We're forgiven for all the horrible stuff that we've done or the bad stuff that we've done. And we believe in Jesus now, and we decide that, all right, now it's time for me to start living like it, right? Now it's time for me to start doing stuff good from here on out because I'm forgiven for the stuff back here. But as time goes on, and as we really start to walk with God, and we start walking the walk and talking the talk and doing all these things that we think that we're supposed to do as Christians, that's whenever stuff starts to get tough, because being a Christian is hard. Being a Christian is really hard, especially in the world as it is right now, right? And a lot of you guys probably know this already, but it can be frustrating, right? Because even if we can nail the not doing the stuff we're supposed to do, even thinking about it turns out to be wrong. Like whenever it comes to you have all the stuff you're not supposed to do, like drink, smoke, go to this party or that party, hang out with this person or this person, cuss or say this. And then even whenever that's hard, then we have all the stuff we are supposed to do, like consistently going to church or reading the Bible or praying, or like we all kind of say that, right? Like, I wish I read the Bible more. I wish I prayed more. I wish I had a stronger relationship with God, right? And we spend all this time like making this effort and all this time trying to do better and trying to do better and trying to do better. And it's really easy to feel guilty, right? It's really easy to read the Bible and look at the people in the Bible and look at Jesus, and honestly, trying to keep up with Jesus can be exhausting. It's really easy to feel guilty and feel like, man, I can never do enough for God. I can never do what I'm supposed to do. But the thing is, what if I told you that living like that being like that trying so hard actually completely misses the point? What if living like that and trying to be this person and trying to keep up with Jesus misses the point of Christianity? Because you see, Christianity isn't something that that we do. It's not a bunch of rules that we follow. It's not a bunch of things that we try to do enough of or try to read enough of. Christianity isn't all about doing stuff for God or doing the right things or not doing the wrong things or going to church when you're supposed to or praying or reading your Bible. And don't get me wrong, because those things are good. Those things are good and those things are important and we should want to do those things. But at its core, following Jesus isn't about what you're doing for God. It's not about what you can accomplish. So what is it about? How do we manage, right? Because this is what it seems like. This is what we hear all the time. How do we manage to totally miss the point? So if you've been at Ripple Effect for this series, and if you've been around the church at all, you've probably heard about a guy named Moses. And one of the things that Moses was really famous for was receiving the 10 Commandments from God, right? And we've all heard the 10 Commandments, right? Thou shalt not kill. I should probably have them memorized. I don't, but there's 9 other ones. We've all probably heard. We've all heard of the 10 Commandments, right? And we've all heard them kind of held up as this is the stuff that you're supposed to do, the most important rules for God's people. But what you might not know is that God just didn't stop with those 10 rules, right? Moses went up and got these 10 rules, and then after that, God actually kept going, and He added on more rules and more rules and more rules. And as Israel grew and Israel developed as a people, God continued to lay down some laws for everyone to follow. And keeping the law was important to God. And it wasn't important to God because it was like the right thing to do, but because it was a means of a way to be closer to Him. It was a way to be closer to Him. It was like a portal. It was like a way to experience God by doing the things that He instructed them to do. It was really a way to demonstrate trust, to say, you know what, God, I trust You, and because I trust You, I'm going to do these things. But over time, the people kind of lost the meaning of that. They kind of lost the idea behind that, and it became more about just doing the right things for the sake of doing the right things. And God kind of got lost in the picture. It stopped being about Him and it started being about the law. And to make things even more complicated, if you went to people at the time and said, hey, how can I get closer to God? How can I better walk with God? If you ask the Israelites that back in this day with all this law, everyone kind of had their own ideas. Everyone had an own opinion about the best way to walk with God or the best way to get closer to Him or the better way to develop your relationship with Him, what they had to do to win God's favor or His forgiveness. Everyone had their own idea, and everyone had their own thoughts about what to sacrifice, how to live, what you're supposed to wear, what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed not to do, what you're not supposed to do, who you're supposed to hang out with, how your hair's even supposed to be, right? Like, obviously they would have accepted this. Just kidding. But when Jesus came and started teaching, and He came and introduced Himself, right, as this rabbi, as this new teacher, and as the Messiah, everyone kind of assumed that He was going to do the same thing. That He was going to start laying down, okay, here's this law, here's this rule, you better do this and not do this, you better be with these people and not these people. And He did do that. He did teach. And what He taught totally transformed people's lives, right? And yeah, He did model a better way to live, and His example was totally unbelievable. And sure, yeah, He traveled all around the country teaching to different crowds and teaching to different people about how to be closer to God, and He even performed miracles. But the whole time He was doing this, He kept saying He was really up to something else. He really had a very specific plan in mind that was going to be something different, that was going to be about something totally new. So one night, Jesus is praying in the garden with His disciples, right? It was called Gethsemane. And a group of soldiers came and they arrested Him on false charges, and they dragged Him before a rigged jury, right? We've all seen Law and Order, right? Where they got the jury sitting there and they make a decision. They stacked a jury and they drag Him in front of a rigged jury, and they sentenced Him to be tortured and to be killed. They whipped Him, they beat Him, they mocked Him, they spit in His face. They did all the most horrible things that you could think to ever do to someone. They did to Him, and in the end, they put a crown of thorns on His head, and they brought Him to a hill. They stripped Him, they nailed Him to a cross, and there He slowly died. So when this happened, when Jesus died on the cross, a lot of people started to wonder about this man, because what's fascinating is while He was arrested, while He was tortured and went through all this horrible stuff, He didn't resist. He didn't resist. And I don't mean that He didn't cry out in pain or that He didn't go through some hard stuff, but He didn't try to escape. or he didn't try to tell them to stop. And whenever he didn't do this stuff, it caught people's attention and it made people wonder, like, what's really going on here? Is there more going on than we think? And while they may not have fully gotten it at the time, this is what we know now, right? Is that Jesus was the Son of God. And he didn't come to save his life. He came to give his life. He was born literally so that he could one day die. And he didn't come just to teach or to inspire or to heal or to say some cool things or just to be a really good teacher or a really good person or a really good rabbi, but he came for a bigger purpose. And it was his death that forever changed what we have to do to be right with God. And as a result, this death on the cross, as a result, what happens has the potential to change your relationship forever. And let me explain this real quick. I don't know if you guys, we all live at the beach, right? And we've all probably gone to the beach one day and forgotten about the stupid parking meter, right? And it's $2.50 for an hour, which is ridiculous within itself. But anyways, we've all gotten a parking ticket, right? We've all gotten a parking ticket, and it's the worst, right? Because you got to pay, however much money, like $35, because you forgot to put a quarter in. And I remember whenever I got mine, I was so mad about it that I just didn't pay the fine. I tried to appeal it, and I went down to the courthouse and I stood in front of the judge and I pled guilty, and I ended up having to pay the money anyways. And I went and I paid it, and she swiped the card, and then she stamps the ticket and it says paid, right? And then she told me, you can go. So I went through this, and I went and I paid my ticket. And here's the point. Whenever we talked several weeks ago about the garden and about Adam and Eve and about them doing this thing that was off limit, right? Eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, they were essentially given a parking ticket in a way. It was a lot more than that, but in a way they were given this thing that they had to pay for. And like we said before, we're all living with constant reminders of how broken this world really is and how broken we really are. And Romans 3:23 puts it like this. It says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So does this mean everyone's gotten a speeding ticket? No. Everyone's done something messed up? No. Everyone's gotten a parking ticket? No. But Paul says that all have sinned. We've all sinned in one way or another, right? And even if it's the small stuff, oh, so what? I said a cuss word on Instagram. Oh, so what? I, told a little lie to make someone feel better. Oh, so what? I, took a candy bar or whatever it is. It's easy to think, is this really that big a deal? But whether the action within and of itself is that big a deal, what it really is that it says something to God. It says, I know kind of the plans you have for me. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm going to do something else. I know what you want me to do, but I'm going to do something else. And it's really easy to look at all these other people who do really bad things, right? Who have really big sins and say, oh, well, at least I'm not as bad as them, or at least I don't do stuff like they do. But the truth is, like Romans 3:23 says, we've all sinned. We've all fallen short. And it doesn't matter if it was, murdering someone or telling a little lie that you weren't supposed to tell. We've all sinned and we've all fallen short of the glory of God. So in one way or another, we've all done this. We've all said, no thanks, God, I've got this. I don't need you. I don't want you. In fact, I'm going to replace you as Lord of my life, right? In a way, we've all done this. And that's sin. Right? That's sin. It manifests itself in all different kinds of ways. And you and I do things that we know are wrong and know are against God's way of doing things. So we get a ticket. We have a charge. We have something that we have to pay. We're sinners, right? And that's a big deal because unfortunately there are consequences for sin. And in Romans, we continue to read, it says, for the wages of sin is death. The wages of sin is death. Ultimately, sin, whatever it is, ultimately coming outside of God's design for life leads to death. And I know that sounds pretty intense, but just think about it. Have you ever noticed how whenever you gossip about someone, you kill their self-esteem? Or how yelling at your parents or whatever can really end up hurting them? Or how cheating on your test, right, can kill chances of success? Or how drinking can get you kicked off the team? Or how going to this party can really end up messing somebody up? Or how any number of sins, right, hatred, selfishness, violence, all this stuff, racism, rape, right, all this horrible stuff bring all sorts of death into the world, whether it's big, whether it's small. And that's what sin does ultimately. It brings death, and it deserves death. And the Bible says that we are all sinners. We're all guilty. We all have to pay. And again, the wages of sin are death. So you're guilty. You're holding a ticket. You've got a sentence, and you've got to pay for it. And the bad news is that the payment isn't going to church. It's not reading the Bible more. It's not praying more. It's not being nice to your brother. It's not whatever. Those things are great, but they're never enough. They're never enough because the wages of sin are death. That's what it costs. It costs death. And there really isn't a way for me or you or anyone to pay that back. To make it right? To be good enough or smart enough or strong enough to overcome it, right? And we can, in our own right, we can never overcome death, and we can never follow the rules enough to make things right again. But here's the cool part, here's the crazy part, here's the point of the gospel, is that God demonstrates his love for us in this. While we are still sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 5:8, right? God demonstrates his love for us in this. While we were sinners, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Christ dying on the cross wasn't like this unfortunate end to a great life. It wasn't a blip in God's plan. It wasn't, oh my gosh, how did that happen? But it was Jesus taking your ticket, taking the debt you owed, walking up to the judge, slapping it on the table, paying it for you, and the judge saying, it's paid. You're good to go. And that's the point. That's the game changer. That's what happened 2,000 years ago, is that Jesus came and said, the law isn't the point. I am. And that what he did on the cross was the point, and that what his death accomplished was the point in paying your ticket, and knowing that this could change the way you see God and your relationship with God forever. That's why Jesus came. Jesus didn't come to tell you to do this or do that or follow this rule or follow that rule. He came to do it for you, to rescue you. It's paid, it's finished, it's done. And you don't have to do anything but trust. Trust the one who's already done it for you. And it's that simple. It's that simple. That Jesus, the man who came and died for your sins, wants you to follow him. That's what it ultimately means to be a Christian, is to follow him. And I'm someone who's realized I don't have to do anything. In fact, I can't do anything, because nothing I do is ever enough. I can't save myself. So all I have to do is trust, right, that Jesus did. And once we understand this, the way we live, the how we live, all of this should change, because we're not living with the burden of payment anymore. Are we living in a certain way where we're trying to pay this off or trying to do stuff right? Or are we living like it's already been done? Are we living like it's already been rescued? Because the truth is that it has been. And one is exhausting, right? Living in this way, like we're trying to accomplish this, we're trying to pay this off, is exhausting. While living like it's already been done is freeing. One's a burden, one's an opportunity. One's guilt-driven, one is joy-driven. One feels like you'll never be enough, while the other one says you are enough. And one ends in death, while the other one ultimately ends in eternal life. And it's not because of anything that you've done, but because of what Jesus has done for you. So the big question of this message, and ultimately the big question of Christianity, is what are you going to do about the cross? What are you going to do about what Jesus has done for you? What are you going to do knowing that Jesus has rescued you? What are you going to do knowing that this man, this God, has come and died for what you did wrong and for what you did messed up? And the truth is that we can never do anything to pay that back, but what we can do is live in a response to it. Live in a response. Live in the fact that he did that for us, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to live for you. I'm going to try to be more like you. And it's not because of a right or wrong thing, but it's out of gratitude for what he's done. And ultimately, that's the point, is to trust Jesus, to follow him, and to be more like him. So whenever we begin to live in this reality, God's story means something completely different. It's no longer that, hey, do this so you can be good enough, or act like this so you can be good enough. But we can live with relief. We can live with confidence, because ultimately it's been done for us. So you guys are about to go to small groups, and I would challenge you guys to really get real about am I living in response to what Christ has done, or am I still trying to scrap it out and be good enough? And your leaders have some great questions for you guys to discuss. Don't forget to send in your questions if you have any, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.